Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm the host, and I'm with Bruce Paterson. Bruce is from Creston. Bruce, I'm excited to interview you. I've followed your work for many years, and you've had a couple of books out that have always caught my eye whenever I visited local bookstores. Kootenay Cameos, or Historic Buildings of the Kootenays. You've really not only drawn them in pen and ink, but you've also written a little bit of a history and story. So great to meet you and great to have you on the show today. So let's just talk about your art and what inspired you to get involved in sort of capturing some of the historical places of the Kootenays.
It all started, I suppose, when some friends got together. I was at Simon Fraser University in the 60s, and we decided, because there was a big fad at the time about looking at old mining towns and digging for bottles and looking for stuff. And we decided we were going to spend 3 weeks in the summer and head off and see what we could find. And we did an extensive tour of the interior. But I will always remember when I entered the valleys in and around Sandon, I was absolutely blown away by all that effort. The romance of all that effort was just amazing. Because you can imagine that there was nothing in those years at all, just wilderness, and how they were able to take that equipment into there and do what they did was just amazing. Right. I was absolutely astounded by it.
So let's talk about your background, because your art isn't ordinary art. I think it's pretty high level, and it's very accurate. How do you go about putting that all together, and what is your background in the artwork?
Well, it's been a long process. I've done it all my life. I'm 70 years old, and I've been doing art for most of it. And a couple of key things happened to me along the way. One of them was the introduction to a draftsman's pen. Okay. And I'll never forget the day I got it, because I was absolutely amazed what I could do with it. And I can remember spending hours in the library at Simon Fraser doodling. And but I did get back to work.
You were supposed to be going to school.
Exactly, and I did do it. I got my degree in biology, so that was great. But after that, I always wanted to travel and see the world and do other things, and so I did. But when we did this trip to the Kootenays, as I say, I was really amazed by what had taken place in those years, and I vowed to come back and do a better job. But, you know, got my degree, went off traveling like we all did in those years, and did odd jobs. Came back. I'd just driven a truck from London to Nairobi, and took us 6 months. I had a great adventure there. Went to Mombasa, was there for weeks. Eventually made my way back to Canada. So here I am. I landed back in Vancouver. What am I going to do? Well, I was looking at the papers. I found out that there was the post office was looking for truck drivers. I mean, good heavens, I just drove a truck through Africa. Why can't I get a job driving a truck here? So I did, and it was a wonderful experience. And
so your home base is Creston now?
It is, yeah.
And it has been for the last?
I would say 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and we lived in the valley for 40 years. We lived in Boswell, Grey Creek, and I worked in Crawford Bay for 8 years, and a wonderful experience. But when I came back to Vancouver and I was working in the post office, I had the misfortune of delivering a bomb. And it went off and killed 3 people. And I thought, wow, this is pretty stiff stuff. So
you're not pulling my leg here, right?
No, I'm not. Okay. No, I was doing my practicum at the time, and it was pretty bizarre. So there I am doing my practicum at a high school in North Vancouver. And I go back to school on the Monday, and the hallways are filled with reporters, and there I am. You know, I'm not supposed to be working while I'm doing this, and so that's what happened. But as I say, I figured I'd better get into teaching, and that's what I did. So I went up to Cassiar for 4 years. Wonderful experience. You know, the outdoors there was unbelievable. I was prospecting and mining and doing all kinds of things. That kind of set me up for my interests in that area. And when we had done that trip through Creston, I had always wanted to come back and actually live there. And I was able to do that by getting, it's a long story, but I finally got a job in a place called Crawford Bay. I didn't know where it was, but I knew it was in the West Kootenay.
You were teaching in Crawford Bay?
Exactly. And so all my summers were filled with going over to Sandon in that area, exploring all the the gullies and the nooks and crannies. And I walked all the ridges, I would say, between Kaslo and New Denver. It was just fabulous. I did that for about 10 years. While I was working at Crawford Bay, Alvin Dunick, a colleague of mine, started a little paper, a little magazine, and it was started to do very well. So he said, Bruce, I know you draw, and you know, you've got this interest in the West Kootenays. Why don't you start a little column? And I said, what a great idea. So I went home that night, thought about it, and I came up with Kootenay Cameos.
So you've published, what, 2 books
I've
in
done
that
2
series?
books, yep.
Okay. So just walk me through the process. So you're walking through the woods or the wilderness, and what are you looking for sort of to capture in your art?
Actually, it happens to me. If you put yourself out in spaces where there are, you know, things have been happening, and you can see the remains, and you just look at it and you go, wow, you know, how did that happen, or who was involved with that? And you got to remember, it was before there was an internet, so when I found out about these buildings or these heritage sites, I would have to go and look for people that lived there or worked there. And
because you tell the story of
that's
that site.
right. Yeah, I wanted to find out what was behind that building, what was behind that site. And I did that for about 10 years, and it was just marvelous. I met some wonderful people.
Right. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about your art, and I know that it's sort of moved into a different area recently. And I've got a copy here of one of your
yes.
your new,
Yeah.
might say, forms of artwork. Do you want to just talk a little bit about what you've got going on here?
Yeah, certainly.
Bruce?
This was a sketch I started 25 years ago. And I had left it in the basement for 3 months. I was off somewhere doing something. I came back after 3 months, and there was a great big black mark there, so I threw it out. I thought, it's done, I can't do it. Last year, I was rummaging around in the basement, and I found the papers I used to set it up. And so I thought, you know what, I can still do it. And so I did. So it's like a little snapshot from 25 years ago.
Okay. So I noticed this one's in color.
Yes.
The rest are black and white. Is that sort of an evolution or a process that you've migrated to, or how did that all come about?
Well, first of all, the little paper, the magazine I was doing the work for, could only deal mostly with black and white.
Right.
So and it fit me because my ink work was black and white, so it was perfect. And I would do one of these sketches and stories once a month, and I did this for about 10 years. So I did, you know, like quite a few of them. And you know, when I started off, I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to run out of things to do in about 2 years or 3 years. I didn't even scratch the surface. You know, it was quite amazing.
So when it comes to your artwork and the detail that you put into it, how much study do you have to put into sort of the scene, or maybe a photo of the scene, to actually be able to capture the essence of that particular location?
Well, as an artist, it comes naturally. You just, you know, you're using your senses, and you know, you're expressing your feelings about what you've seen and what you would like other people to see. And the medium of ink and using a pen is just perfect for it, I think. And I'm absolutely anal when it comes to detail, so I've got to have all the little cracks and rust spots and whatever else in the picture to make it real.
I get the impression that this isn't our project. This is you've invested some time into these.
I don't know how I got away with it. I don't know how my wife put up with it, how my kids put up with it, but I wasn't very social, so maybe that's how I got away with it.
Yeah. How many scenes have you captured, do you think?
Oh, I've done over 100 easily.
What kind of projects are you working on now?
Oh, well, I'm a sculptor, and I do a lot of oils. I do ink work, colored inks. I've just completed a book that I did for the illustrations for Chris Luke's book. Okay. Really proud of that. He was the long-standing Indian chief of the Tanaha people in and around Creston at the Lower Kootenay Band, and it was a real honor to be asked to do that. And we sat together, and he would describe what he wanted in his scenes, and it was really interesting to listen to his take on life in the valley and in the various aspects of gathering food and hunting and fishing and all the rest of it.
So that book's in production?
It is. It's at the Publisher as we speak, and I'm really excited about seeing what they've done with it. It's I've seen some of the design copies that have come out, and it's fabulous.
Bruce, why is it important that we capture these historic scenes?
Because they're disappearing. I cannot believe the number of buildings, the number of sites that have changed or they've been lost. People die, and you know, they've left a legacy, and it's really important to preserve that, I think.
Yes. And what kind of feedback do you get from folks around the Columbia Basin that see your artwork, maybe flip through your books, maybe even meet you at a farmer's market like I did?
Absolutely. I just love doing the farmer's market because you never know who you're going to see, and I always get a great response. And topic of conversation, never a problem. There's a lot of interest in it, and it's very supportive. I find it just wonderful.
Well, Bruce, congratulations. I've always admired your series, Kootenay Cameos, a tremendous series. I'd recommend it to anyone that is interested in the region. It's a real snapshot of what has happened over the years in our development throughout the Kootenays. Good work. I hope you continue with your projects, and thank you for being a guest today.
Very kind of you, Keith. Pleasure to be here.
This is Talking Kootenay Books, and my name is Keith Powell. Our guest today has been Bruce Paterson of Creston. Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell, and I'm pleased to have a Nelson-based author and a writer with us today, Peter Bartl. Thank you for coming over to Cranbrook, and we appreciate you being our guest today. Peter, what book have you just recently published?
Yes, the title of my book is The Modern Heritage of Nelson Architecture.
Okay.
That includes the architecture, the buildings of Art Deco, modernism, and mission revival, and all from the 20s into the 60s.
I see, Peter. So modern architecture in Nelson. What inspired you to write about I'm assuming, residential and commercial buildings in Nelson?
Yes, I am a modernist in my heart, and I was teaching modern design history and architectural history at the University of Alberta.
Okay.
And when I moved into Nelson 5 years ago, I realized that the buildings of that period were completely ignored.
Okay.
Because Nelson has such a strong history of Victorian architecture.
Okay.
And everybody knew about Victorian architecture, but nobody knew about anything that happened after World War I.
I see. So you saw that there was an opportunity to maybe educate or let people know about that era of architecture, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I started with just photographing some buildings of that era, and thought we're going to have an exhibition at Touchstones. But then it grew.
Okay.
And it grew. And there was way too much for an exhibition, and I had to start with digging into the research, going to Touchstones in the archives and looking up dates and architects and that kind of thing. So then I thought, well, there's nothing here written about private buildings. Mm-hmm. And then I saw a private building which looked kind of interesting. I went and knocked on the door.
Right.
And people looked at me a bit strangely because this old guy here coming to knock on your door and say, I want to talk about your house.
Right.
And but the reception I got was wonderful. People let me come in their houses and for hours talked, if they really were interested in the history of the house, they talked about it, brought out photographs, the family, etc.
Okay, so you got the whole story or background of the house or the building often?
Yes.
Okay. So
often,
how many buildings would you have profiled in your book?
It's 71 buildings in total, from all the way from Nelson itself on the North Shore.
I see.
And partly official building, commercial building, public buildings, private buildings. Yeah.
So any of these houses or these buildings sort of stand out in your mind that were really unique?
Yes, the one building which really I'm concerned about is Mount St. Francis.
Okay.
Yeah, which was built as a Catholic hospital, I guess,
Okay.
In 1950.
Yes.
And it's been used as an old folks home, as a hospital, until about 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful building built by my favorite architect,
Mm-hmm.
which is Ilsa Williams, which is another interesting part that Nelson has a world-class female architect, which hardly anybody ever knows about it.
Okay.
So Mount
So-
St. Francis at the moment is empty, and
Yes.
nobody knows what to do about it.
Okay.
Do with it. So it might get torn down,
Okay.
but it is a world-class building.
Wow. Okay, so you talk about 70 buildings in Nelson. Yeah. What kind of scope is that? Is that sort of just representative of some of the outstanding buildings, or is that a pretty comprehensive list?
I think it's pretty comprehensive,
Okay.
although I keep on finding new ones, which I can't include in the book anymore.
Right.
Yeah, but it's I think 70 buildings for a town of 10,000.
Yeah,
That's a lot, yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah.
So who do you think this book will appeal to, Peter?
I would say anybody who grew up in Nelson,
Mm-hmm.
because I got a lot of feedback
Yes.
from people who suddenly said, oh, I remember that building. Yes, oh, yeah, the bowling lanes there.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, oh, well, that's what it is now. And because buildings change, so got a lot of feedback.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously people from Nelson will be interested in your
Yeah.
book, but I would think that the whole Kootenays would be interested in your book and beyond throughout the province,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people are interested in the heritage and the architectural style of our small towns in BC. Do you think the
Yeah.
appeal will be a bit broader?
I think so, yes, yeah. Because when I travel around the province, I see here and there, I see buildings which would have interested me, and which are Art Deco buildings, for instance, and or purely modernist buildings, and so that I'm actually thinking perhaps I might continue and broaden the scope.
Yes, okay,
And,
good for you. So let's just talk about how you went about compiling all this information. So you said you'd actually often visit the location, take photographs, interview the people that lived there or occupied the building now. How did you go about then putting that into a book form?
Each book in here, I try to stick to the facts
Okay.
as much as possible.
So each profile, right?
Each profile book is each building is
Yeah.
profiled. Some of them have only one page, others have 2 or 3 pages.
Right.
I'm concentrating on the pictures, so it's a picture book.
Yes.
There is very little written, as much as I knew about it, but
Right.
quite often there was no information or hardly any information available. And so each building has an information panel which does list the year it was built, the architect, if possible, the builder,
Okay.
and also the style, the building style that it's in, and the location.
Right.
And then the rest of the text is quite often, it's my personal opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you tell a little bit of the background and the story, and then
Yeah,
also
that
give
book,
your
yeah.
own analysis of it.
Yeah.
So this, to me, seems like a very valuable document, because we know that in many of our towns throughout the Kootenays and I guess elsewhere, much of this heritage can easily be lost. Do you think that it is wise for us to preserve this?
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, I'm quite often worried about buildings disappearing, and I also list quite a few buildings which have disappeared already with archival photographs.
Okay.
And then most of the time I have a smaller picture at least of what is there now, so that people can identify where those buildings have gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned Mount St. Francis as one of the noteworthy buildings. Any residential properties come to mind that seem to stand out?
Yes, there's 3 or 4 buildings which were built in the 1940s.
Okay.
And they're very similar in style. Very
see.
similar in style. And nobody knows who built them.
Okay.
It's just said out-of-town architect
Okay.
built those 4 buildings, but we don't know. And there's a funny thing that the names of the architects quite often are missing, whereas the local Nelson Daily News reported on the local builders
Mhm.
they were building.
Okay.
But quite often the architect, if it was out of town, they didn't bother to mention it.
Right. So a little bit of mystery behind your book as well.
There's lots of mysteries there, yeah.
Okay.
I really consider the book with loose ends hanging out from
Yeah.
everywhere, because
Yeah.
my research is full of holes, and
Right.
and also since I am the new kid in town,
Mhm.
I got a lot of information from the residential historians like Craig Nesterhoff
Yes.
and Ron Wellwood and so, and Bob Inwood as well. They helped me a lot.
Okay. Good.
And but I also find that ordinary people
Yes.
knew a lot
Oh, good.
about buildings. Yeah.
Well, it really shows that every person, every building, everything has a story. So it's great that you've captured those stories and kept them so that Nelson and the future generations can actually refer back to it and see the significant history that is contained in their city. How long did it take you to compile all this information?
Oh, it's about 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 2.5 years. Yeah. Yeah, I consider it as a starting point, really.
Right.
Of I wanted to call at one point, I think of calling it an inventory or a survey.
Right.
And but then.
Well, I've looked through. I understand your book is just being published and it's coming out very soon.
Yeah.
But I've looked through part of it, and it would appear to me that it's more than an inventory. It sort of captures the essence of those buildings and tells a story. So well done, Peter. We appreciate you doing that. So just wrapping up, your book will be available locally throughout the Kootenays, and people can really dive into the architecture, the history of Nelson buildings. Congratulations. We appreciate you taking the time to be our guest on Talking Kootenay Books.
Okay. Can I mention just one more thing?
Yes, you can.
Because, this book is very much a co-production
Okay.
of.
Well, tell me about that.
Yes, my wife Jane Merks, she has done all the practical stuff.
Okay.
She is my manager.
I see.
She is. She grounds me. I'm the dreamer here about
Okay.
architecture, but she does ground me.
So it sounds like a team effort to put this book together.
Very much so, yes. Yeah.
Good. So
Yeah.
you've both been working on it for 2.5 to 3 years?
No, she came in at the end, really,
I-
just the last half year or so, yes.
I see.
But she designed the cover, for instance. Being
Okay.
also a designer, she designed the cover
I see.
and did all the photoshopping, everything inside the
Right.
books, yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Peter, if someone wanted more information, how would they get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of us would be by email.
Okay.
And the email is both our names.
Okay.
So that's Bartl, B-A-R-T-L, Merks, which is her name, M-E-R-K-S @shah.ca.
Great. Well, congratulations on a very interesting book. I know that you'll be launching it soon, and people can look forward to reading about the history and the architect of the Kootenays and specifically Nelson's. So we appreciate you again being our guest.
Great, thank you.
This has been Talking Kootenay Books, and my name is Keith Powell.